Hello YouTube, this is Christian coming to you with another knife review. This time on the table we have a Chaves 229 Redencion. Now this is really one of my favorite all-time designs and favorite all-time knives. And as you can probably see just looking at the scratch marks and the general usage marks on this particular knife, I've been using the hell of a lot out of that knife. So it's been in my pocket on a daily basis for a really long time, and for good reason. When this knife, when I first saw it on one of the many knife channels, I just instantly fell in love with its lines, with its relatively simplistic design or simplistic geometry and simplistic appearance. It's just such a nice tooly kind of tank of a knife, and it just gives you a lot of confidence just looking at it. And once you've got one and you hold it in your hands, it's one of those knives where you really will have a hard time parting with it, and if you do, I'm sure you will sooner or later regret it, because it's just a really awesome knife. It is yeah, by any means, I mean, also a very good example for Chinese knives, made really next to perfection in terms of quality and workmanship. So it's just absolutely great. So I'll give you a couple of basic specs first. Overall length of this knife is 8.3 inches. The plate length comes in at 3.6 inches. The plate width is 1.25 inches, and the plate thickness is 0.16 inches. Now that runs at around 4 millimeters plate thickness, so it is quite beefy stock, as you can perhaps make out on the camera there. It is by no means a thin knife, so there's a good bit of beefiness and sturdiness to it. They are available in a number of blade shapes. Personally, I'm a big fan of drop point blades. They look quite classy and I like it. I'm not a fan of Tanto. You can also get it in a Tanto version. And this is just personal preference. I understand the advantages of a Tanto blade, but in my particular case, I'm always a little bit more leaning towards drop point blades. Now, as you can see, the blade is a compound grind. So we have that flat grind tip that has a great sturdiness to it, and you can see from the marks it has been used a lot in that particular area as well. And then we're going into a nice deep hollow grind, and that grind just looks spectacular on that plate, especially the various degrees. You have a straight grind on here and then a perpendicular grind to that, and that just is a beautiful, interesting shading that is happening when you're handling this particular blade. Now, in terms of cutting performance, it's M390 steel, and I have no complaints despite its thick spine, its thickness. It has been an excellent performer in most every circumstances. I've been slicing cardboard with it, opening bags, even poking in wood at times with the tip, and I never had a single issue with it. In terms of sliciness, it's perhaps not the most slicey blade, but that's not the type of knife where you would expect it to be a really good slicer. When it came from the factory, I modified it a little bit. When it came from the factory, it had, obviously, at the time, I didn't want to fork out the money for a full titanium version, so I went for the G10. And the G10 comes with a textured diamond pattern, is perhaps the best way to describe it. And I didn't like that at all. It had a certain roughness to it that straight away it was too sharp for my taste, and actually looked a little bit cheap on it. So I straight away took it to the sander and took that off, and it didn't leave a perfect finish, but personally, I don't mind that too much. By now, it has gained a little bit of glossiness and a little bit of patina there. So, but it is much nicer to my general feel in the hand. So I much appreciate that, as opposed to that rough, and if you excuse me saying that, perhaps a little bit of a cheapish appearance with that. It just looks like cheap plastic ex-factory. So it's something I didn't like in particular. When I got it, I regretted not getting the full titanium version. But as soon as I had the diamond pattern taken off the top, it actually, I'm quite fine and happy with it as it is right now, and I didn't have the longing to change the scale or get the full Thai version. All of that here you can see is minimal hardware. This is not the latest version of the Redencion. It now comes in a variety of different opening actions as well. This is a thumb stud version. You can get it with a kickstop, which is a retracting flipper tab, is perhaps the best way to describe it. And there's also smaller versions that are flippers. And personally, I'm a great fan of the thumb stud version. It just works for me. And right now, also the pocket clip. At the time, you could only get the skull-shaped pocket clip. And what I did, I just hollowed it out and threaded some leather through it, mostly because where I'm wearing it in an environment where I have certain clients. They wouldn't necessarily like the kind of look of it. So in this particular case, I just modified it. And by now you can see the pocket clip too looks nicely worn in. It's actually, it would be about time to replace it. But in this particular case, this is just the character of the knife. It's been used. And that is something where I have to say, look, if I got this particular knife and I was scared what it would look like after I use it, I shouldn't have gotten it in the first place. So, sure, it's an expensive knife. It's a beautiful knife, and it will get wear marks, and that's just part of the deal, part of the ticket. You buy an expensive knife, and it's a bit of a shame if you're, too worried that it might get scratches that you're actually not using it. Well, that's what it looks like if you're getting an expensive knife, and if you're using it and I don't mind it at all. It's a statement. It's important to me to actually say, well, I can use it. That's what I got it for, and that's fine. That's just everything about it, and it's only cosmetic. I mean, it's quite easy to polish that up or polish it out and give it a bead blast and make it look like new again if I wanted to. But every scratch has its meaning, has its history, and that's an important aspect of it as well. Now, as far as Chinese construction is concerned, I have to say, look guys, this is second to none. I mean, right from the first day, I was thoroughly impressed by this particular knife. It just flicks out with authority. It is a beautiful, beautiful deployment action. You flip it around and just have a close look at the kind of gaps you have in the frame lock. And it's probably even a bit more clearly seen if I just close it halfway. You see, that's just, I'm not sure actually whether that is EDM slotted or whether it's just plain water jet cut. But this is just a tiny, maybe a 0.7, 0.6 millimeter gap that you see there. And that's just beautiful. And if you flip it, you can see right now as the blade is riding on the detent ball, this is absolutely flush. And when you close it, it ticks in, of course. Your detent ball now finds its place and comes in. But you can see there's little details, right? And you can see that this is absolutely flush, right? then we come out, and we have a beautiful clear engagement there. So everything here is absolutely perfect. Also your little hardened insert is absolutely perfectly flush with the plate start there. So this is perfection. As far as the closing action is concerned, it's a guillotine. It's absolutely, you have a little bit of a step there, so you kind of have to push it, get it over that one. But once it is, it's just absolutely perfect. Hold on, it needs a little bit of momentum to close perfectly. It's absolutely perfect. So initially when you get it, it needs a little bit of a wear in. The thumb action is a little bit hard to start with, and you got to be mindful of your hand placement. So it's quite easy to actually place your hands, because the pocket clip is sitting halfway on the frame lock and halfway on the scale, and it's quite easy to actually choke that knife a little bit. So after a wear-in period, however, this is just absolutely, and after it overcame that initial hard wear-in period, it doesn't change. It doesn't get any lighter. It is absolutely perfect. I must have opened this knife many thousand times, opened and closed it many thousand times, and there's no change whatsoever in this particular action. The centering never changed. Nothing here in terms of plate play. No pivot lash, no nothing. So this really, kudos to Reate. In terms of a simplistic looking knife with clean geometry executed perfectly. Absolutely, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. So yeah. Also, look at the thumb studs. They're really nice, bulky thumb studs. You have very good access to these spots there, and it's just absolutely nice. In terms of jimping, if you want to call it that, I was never quite sure about that one. Yes, it gives you traction, but you must have huge hands to kind of call that jimping. It's more of a design feature, personally. Sure, it gives you a little bit of traction, but so do many other features of knives, but in terms of size, I wouldn't go down and actually call that jimping. These screws give you traction, perhaps even if you're wearing gloves. That is really quite helpful. It will do more for you than just regular jimping. I give them that. But as far as your thumb is concerned and your bare hands, that could be nicer, because it's quite rough there at the corners. I mean, there's no sharp edges, but that's perhaps my only point of contemplation there. As far as sharpening choil, also, this is absolutely perfect. You see, you have a reasonable amount there before you start to go into your plunge grind. So there's a lot of room for sharpening that knife without producing a smile on your actual cutting edge. That is really nicely done. And also, if you're, like me, then I don't mind, because I'm pulling back here with my index when I'm holding a knife like this, and it might be more of a sharpening choil, but you can quite easily go in there, and I've done so many times. This is also a very usable finger choil if your hands are not, if your hands are not huge. Now, yeah, the Chaves these days coming in a few more modern variants. Very good. Now you get the choice. So the more modern, also by Reate produced versions of this particular knife, they come with a pocket clip where you have the choice. So the screws, this one is screwed from the inside of your scales, with the new ones, you have the screws sitting outside. Aesthetically, I don't find it quite as pleasing, but I greatly appreciate the fact that you can take the skull off and just put a very nicely looking regular pocket clip on it. And so you're actually given a choice. But for a lot, I believe that skull pocket clip was perhaps a little bit of a deal breaker. For me, it wasn't. I modified it. And even if I wouldn't have modified it, I would have kept the knife. I just wouldn't have carried it as much. But so this particular knife is still available at the moment. I think this version is even on special on some of the sides. I think Knife Center has it for $250 US. And compared to many other knives in that price bracket, I have to say, if you like the design, in terms of action and quality, I haven't seen a lot that I would say is built better, more refined in terms of workmanship, in terms of action, in terms of everything, function. Fine. Sure, it's not a design that is, you know, as detailed as many others. You don't have fancy Timascus or super fancy milled scales. But for me, that doesn't matter. This is a very, very, very functional blade in a very functional design. But in terms of materials used, in terms of tolerancing, in terms of everything, this is top notch. Yeah, okay, perhaps not the most expensive material used left, right and center. You don't have zirconium or zirconium, some studs or flytanium or what have you. But to me that doesn't matter. In this particular case, the charm of this knife is in its tool character, it's in its functionality. And a functional knife that is made to perfection is a keeper in my book. So strong recommendation to the 229 Redencion. Great knife designed by Chaves and executed to perfection by Reate. So if you can get one, by all means you will be happy with it, and I'm pretty sure you'll keep it. Alright, you have a good weekend. See you guys.